in the absence of a stable economy, in the absence of really predictable work experiences, the need to lead yourself takes center stage. If you don't lead yourself, there's plenty of people who will volunteer to lead you, right? Whether it's your boss, a CEO, some LinkedIn guru, the two of us on this podcast, you have to put yourself in the driver's seat of your career because only you know what you're after. It's often tempting to feel powerless, but when we flip the script and decide to control the controllable and make moves despite some uncertainty, that's when things start to change. People are frustrated with their boss, with their coworkers, with the system, the economy, whatever it is. It plays out in almost every single organization, even great organizations. Everywhere we go, we're going to have some type of annoyance. It's just part of being a human. But our ability to operate in the face of those instead of run away from them is what determines our success and our happiness.
Hello and welcome to the Career Changers. Today, our guest is Elizabeth Lotardo, author of Leading Yourself. Find more joy, meaning, and opportunities in the job you already have. Despite imperfect bosses, weird economies, lethargic co-workers, unknowing systems, and too many deliverables. This is named the first must-read book for personal and professional growth in Forbes by Dr. Ruth Gosian. And today we will discuss her career journey and how you can find more happiness in the job that you already have. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with your story, first of all, and your career. So, first of all, where did you grow up and what was your dream job when you were a child?
So I grew up just east of Atlanta here in the United States, and I had so many failed business adventures as a child. I was always every weekend starting something new, whether it was a lemonade stand, I made bracelets, I had an ice sculpture business, which was really just frozen water balloons. So I never really had a dream job. And I think a lot of people have that experience. There was no inner dialogue that said, yeah, I have to be a teacher, I have to be a nurse. I tried lots of different things for a long time.
And so then, what did you decide to study? What is your educational background?
I'll tell you, when I was applying to college, I was talking with some of my high school teachers, and I told one that I wanted to double major in television and education. This was in the early 2000s. And she said, those things don't go together at all. You need to pick one. She was obviously wrong in that, but I did pick one and I picked advertising because it felt like to me advertising pulled together education, this desire to inform people, help them make good decisions, and also television and media and marketing in a way that was interesting to me. So I got my undergraduate degree in advertising. I worked in ad agencies for a while, and then I went back to school to get a master's in organizational psychology and shifted my focus to internal communication.
And it's interesting that you say you were interested to do different fields and someone say they don't go together because sometimes actually that's a reflection of our personalities. It doesn't necessarily mean we like only one thing, but we have different interests and it's difficult to just choose one. What was then your first job? How did you start your professional life?
My first job out of college was an account manager at an ad agency. And I was really excited to get that job because I loved advertising and I loved people. But in a few months, I burned out. And I think that's a common workplace experience to leave your education, whether that's high school, university, technical school, really excited and then suddenly feel not that excited to go to work.
Yeah, because maybe you don't have a full awareness of what is out there. And so, how did you continue your career from there?
So I was unfulfilled in my role in advertising, and I knew I wanted to make a change, but I didn't quite know how. So I took on a freelance assignment, which was writing training for Google AdWords sellers. And Google AdWords was what I was selling and managing at the ad agency. And through the process of creating training, which is something I hadn't done before, I became really interested in internal communications and education from that vantage point. So instead of two customers, two employees. And that prompted me to go back to school and study organizational psychology with a concentration in coaching and consulting to dig into how can we make the work experience better through education instead of convincing people to buy things that they don't really need.
That's really interesting. So, at what point in your career did you come up with the idea of writing a book and specifically leading yourself? What inspired you to write it?
So I came up with the concept of leading yourself long before I wrote the book. I contracted with LinkedIn Learning in 2017 to do a course on self-leadership when they were starting to expand their online course offerings. And what I saw during the pandemic was the analytics behind that course told me it was becoming more and more popular. And that in the absence of an in-office environment, in the absence of a stable economy, in the absence of really predictable work experiences, the need to lead yourself started to take center stage. So I updated that course during the pandemic in 2021, and it continued to gain traction. So I deepened my studies. I started interviewing people who were applying what they learned in the course, trying to figure out what problems they were having, what challenges did I not address, what could they teach me about this concept and how it could change your work experience. And 8 years later, I guess, from my first launch of that course, I had enough to be confident in coming out with a book.
And how has your own career shaped your perspective on finding joy and meaning in work?
So, a lot of my role is on employee engagement consulting. I write for my book, Harvard Business Review, I write for LinkedIn Learning, but the vast majority of my days is spent helping organizations engage their employees. And so I've been in and out of hundreds, probably, organizations, and I see the same problems that people are, to the subtitle of my book, frustrated with their boss, frustrated with their coworkers, frustrated with the system, the economy, whatever it is. It plays out in almost every single organization, even great organizations. So the way that influenced me and the work that I eventually brought to the table with leading yourself is these frustrations are ever present. Everywhere we go, we're going to have some type of annoyance. It's just part of being a human and being a human at work. But our ability to operate in the face of those instead of run away for them or complain about them or wish they were different is what determines our success and our happiness. So I personally shifted, and the crux of my work is shifting away from sitting with all the things that were wrong into accepting them and figuring out what you can do in the meantime.
And I guess this is one of the key concepts of your book about leading yourself, leading ourselves. So, why is that important for career success?
There's plenty of people who will volunteer to lead you, right? If you don't lead yourself, whether it's your boss, a CEO, some LinkedIn guru, the two of us on this podcast, you have to put yourself in the driver's seat of your career because only you are going to look out for you the way you deserve. Only you know yourself. Only you know what you're after. And it's often tempting to feel powerless, especially if you have a micromanager or the economy is uncertain, like it is at the recording of this episode, and think that we don't have the sense of agency to lead ourselves in our career. But when we flip the script and decide to control the controllable and make moves despite some uncertainty, that's when things start to change.
And so, what is actually the key to accept if we have imperfect bosses and less than ideal workplace condition? Because you said before we have to accept it, but what actually does that mean?
So there's a distinction between imperfect workplaces and toxic workplaces, abusive workplaces. And I put a chart in my book about some examples, and I'll share one with you now. An annoying, imperfect workplace is having a manager who's like a micromanager. They reach out to you a little more frequently than you would like. Their direction is a little too detailed than what you would prefer. That's annoying. And it's baseline level, probably present in every single organization. A toxic manager, an abusive manager, something you shouldn't accept, is a manager who calls you an idiot for not reading their mind. A manager who says you're going to be fired if you don't answer the phone at Sunday night, 11 p.m. There's a big gray area here. But what I've seen in my work is the people who can operate in the face of that minor annoyance, just frustrating general stuff, they're a lot happier and more successful at work than those who throw their hands up and try and find a new job, which inevitably has the same annoying factors as the old job.
And I think, I mean, it will depend also on our type of personalities, the way we react to certain situations. So, what is the role of resilience in maintaining happiness in challenging working environments?
Resilient has come center stage, I think, for good reason, because we are all up against change and uncertainty and setbacks. But what we see in the research and what a lot of our lived experience tells us is that when we are confronted with one of those setbacks, right? Maybe it's your organization is adopting this new technology and it's going to make your job really frustrating. When you throw your hands up in the face of that and say, "Oh, I can't do it," you are the only one who's paying the price. You're the one who's in a bad mood. You're the one who's not going to get a great performance review. You're the one who's going to be looked at as, oh, this is negative. Versus the resilient mindset is, okay, this is going to be frustrating, but I can do it. This is my chance to step into it. This is my chance to ask questions. This is my chance to learn a new skill. I'm going to figure this out for me because I depend on it. Is a very different orientation and it plays out really differently in the long term.
And so you have a different approach. It's not related to change career unless we are in a toxic environment. And it's more about finding happiness where we are. What are some practical tips if someone is looking to find more opportunities in their current role?
The best thing you can do if you want more opportunities in your current role is be vocal about it. All organizations are overwhelmed right now, and the odds of your manager reading your mind that you want more opportunities and finding the perfect thing for you and serving it up are really low. So, the more you can be proactive in saying, I would like an opportunity to lead a project, I would like to be involved with this initiative, I would like the chance to grow my skills in this way, the more likely you are to get it. Saying, oh, I want more opportunities is vague and it's easy to dismiss. So zoom in on what you actually want and don't be afraid to speak up.
And some of the points you raise are having to deal with lethargic coworkers or frustrated systems. And an example, I would say sometimes, yes, we can ask, we want more, we can ask for promotion, we can ask for more responsibilities, but sometimes it's actually not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, what advice do you have for dealing with this type of situation, whether it's the system or it's coworkers that they don't really care much?
If you're frustrated with your current work environment, consider how you can modify the periphery. And what I mean by the periphery is all the things that surround what's currently frustrating you. So let's take a lethargic coworker, for example, someone that you have to have a meeting with every day that you don't like. All of the things that surround that center annoyance, the periphery, are things like what are you listening to before and after that meeting? Are you listening to music? Are you listening to a podcast? Where is the meeting? Can you have it standing up? Can you have it virtually? Can you have it camera off or camera on? How can you change that? What are you drinking during the meeting? Not suggesting alcohol, but can you bring a big water with you? Can you bring a snack that makes you feel better? Can you invite someone to the meeting to help change the dynamic? Zooming in on all the things that you do control that surround this frustrating thing at the center do actually change your experience. But when you sit in the frustration and say, oh, this thing at the center is so annoying, I hate that I have to do it, you spend your whole day frustrated.
So I guess is a lot is related about energizing ourselves and bringing positive energy independently from what's going on out there, so that maybe we can feel more inspired or more positive, and then maybe give a positive contribution. Something else that can happen is actually having to deal with unpredictable economy or high stress levels, something that is very real and happening right now.
Yes, our economy is certainly unpredictable, and AI and the stress that's putting on organizations is the root cause in a lot of cases. But you can only control your own behavior, and your ability to lead yourself through this moment is going to determine where you end up on the other side of this. So, my first piece of advice is don't react rashly. We know there's a lot of clickbait news headlines around the economy right now and about how AI is taking jobs. Take a deep breath and don't move if you don't have to. Think in the long term what your goals are and back out from that. As tempting as it is to be like, oh, AI is taking my job, I need to totally reinvent your career. Take a breath. The second piece of advice I would say in dealing with a weird economy, AI, and how that's impacting the world of work is to zoom in on your uniquely human skills. AI is changing everything for everyone, but we all have uniquely human abilities like building relationships, like strategic thinking and decision making, like seeing things in context. The more you can bring those skills to the forefront of your role, the less likely you are to be really disrupted by AI in this weird economy, and the more likely you are to open doors to future opportunities that are less prone to disruption as well.
And together with the lack of promotion at work, there is the very possibility to feel stagnant. What strategies can people use to find inspiration when they're actually in situations that don't allow them to thrive?
If you're low on inspiration at work, you're not alone. There was some recent reporting that said 2 in 3 office workers feel stuck in their jobs. They're not inspired, but they don't feel like they can leave. So take a little bit of solace in that. But how do you take some proactive effort to make sure you do start to feel better at work? One of the best things you can do is tap into your ripple effect. How the work you're doing makes a difference on a daily basis. Who gets the emails you're sending? What would happen if you didn't send them? What customers are buying from your organization? How is your product or service impacting them? When we can connect ourselves into why our work matters, instead of viewing our inbox as this like big scary thing and our to-do list is too long and all these people is so annoying, we give our brain context and we start to recognize that even though there are some frustrations in this work experience, it matters. It's making an impact on someone. And the more you can connect to that, the better you feel at work.
So, we give lots of tips and suggestions to people looking to improve their work situation. But what about leaders? What can they do to create environments that encourage their teams, lead themselves effectively, and also to be happier?
If you're a leader who's listening to this, wishing that your team would take some initiative and stop bringing all their problems to you, your first step is going to be to empower your team. How do you do that? First, lay off the micromanaging. You have to give them some space. People never feel the confidence to lead themselves if they know that the person who is traditionally leading them is in their inbox every hour. Second, ask questions. You want your team talking to you to think strategically, not just taking blind. They think, ask them what they've tried, ask them what problem solving that they think needs to be taking center stage. So the more you can shift the emotional weight and the intellectual decision making to your team through giving them the space, asking them questions, and empowering them to take ownership of their role, the better you feel as a leader and the better they feel as an employee.
And in your perspective, what cultural shifts are needed for workplaces to become better supportive of their employees so that they can find more happiness and also meaning in their jobs?
I think we've started to see a big workplace culture shift, and we saw it in the pandemic where organizations were saying things like, we have a purpose here, come work for us, your job matters. And that messaging was well intended because what HR leaders recognized is people want to go to work to experience meaning, to have an impact, yes, to get paid, but also to provide value to the world. So the messaging is all there. Where I think the disconnect is that is not the traditional experience of most employees. It's like meaning filled, purpose driven, amazing work experience that the recruitment ad promised. And that has caused a lot of frustration. But again, the messaging was in the right place. I think the culture shift that needs to happen to make all of these things come together is to say, instead of we promise, we being the employer, we promise you this great work experience, you're going to feel meaning, you're going to feel purpose, it's going to be amazing. Shift that to you can create this work experience for you. You can give yourself meaning and joy and opportunities in this role. We're going to give you the landscape and we're going to teach you how to make this work for you in a way that does make an impact. So shifting that responsibility from it's our job as the employer to provide these amazing experience to it's our job as an employer to set the table for you to make that experience yourself.
That's really interesting. And we talk about self-leadership. How does that contribute to overall life satisfaction beyond the workplace? As anyway, as individual, we are always looking to grow and to become better persons.
So, what we see in the research is that someone's ability to lead themselves is transcendent of the office environment. Your ability to lead yourself, to know that you can set direction, you can assess yourself, you can deal with change, that is relevant to being a friend, being a spouse, being a parent, being a member of your community. It's relevant to everything, and it only happens when you feel empowered. The challenge is we spend a lot of our time at work, 9, 10 hours a day sometimes, being filled with this narrative of we're not empowered and we can't make decisions and we're not in control. And that has a ripple effect. But when we change things and we say, okay, actually, even though I work for a company, I am in control. I'm in charge of me. This is my career. I'm in the driver's seat. We start to experience that level of empowerment and autonomy in our personal relationships too. It gives you permission to make your marriage better. It gives you permission to change the way that you parent compared to those who came before you. It gives you permission to invest in your community instead of just lamenting and wishing it would be different. We know that the way we show up at work is often a predictor of the way we show up in our lives. And when we change our work experience, we change everything.
Time is going really fast, and we are approaching the end of this episode, but we still have a few more questions. So, first of all, what advice would you give to someone that is struggling to find meaning in their current job?
If you're struggling to find meaning in your current job, first, let's talk about the definition of meaning. A lot of times we think that work should be this like transcendent, amazing experience. And if it's not that, we're somehow empty. That is not the case for the vast majority of people. That said, you still deserve to feel like your work matters. So if you're not experiencing that, you can articulate your ripple effect, think about where all the work you do is going and how it has an impact on people. You can seek feedback from other people, whether it's your colleagues, your boss, your customers, on, hey, how did I do at this? Is it, how am I making a difference? Did that give you what you needed to do your job? Trying to dial into that ripple effect. And you can also explore ways that you are bringing your unique self to work that don't necessarily have to do with your job description, right? Maybe you're a great friend to people at work. Maybe you're a great collaboration partner. You're great at brainstorming. You're always willing to lend an ear. You're a mentor to these new hires, right? All these ways we can make a difference that don't necessarily line up neatly with our job description, those can make a profound impact on the way we experience work.
So you gave a lot of advice, but now we are really at the end of this episode, and we have a last question that we asked all of our guests. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say to my younger self that you have more power than you think. When you're new in a career, when you're in an uncertain environment, when you're just starting out, it's tempting to think that you're in this tiny role, but you always have more power than you think. The way you manage your mindset, the way you show up to work, the relationships that you build, those are all within your control. And those are the biggest predictors of happiness and success at work.
Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for sharing your journey and insights with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And also, of course, tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of the Career Changers. Thank you.